I came across a comment on one of the boxing forums just a few days ago, and he brought up something that had been worrying me, and I had been thinking about after watching the Jennings fight at the start of last year. And he was talking about how Wladimir Klitschko's accuracy had been in decline and his punch output had been in decline, and Vladimir's just been on the slide now. Now, the way he was talking about things, he was talking about how Vladimir's pretty much shot now. Now, at 40 years old, you wouldn't necessarily say he was shot. On the slide at 40, yeah, of course you're starting to be on the slide at 40, but to be completely shot, that was something I was really worried about. So I thought to myself, can he actually figure out if Wladimir Klitschko, at least if his accuracy and his punch output has declined? And it's actually quite a simple thing to actually do and find out. So I got a group of about 6 fights before and after David Haye, and just to compare the two and to see if his punch output has declined dramatically since then, if his accuracy has declined dramatically since then, and just work out and actually see what happened and see if there's any truth towards this, because it is something that can actually be worked out now that you have punch stats for every single fight. So I've separated the stats into before and after. 6 different fights before and after. Now, I think that Wladimir Klitschko was at his best when he fought David Haye. A lot of people might disagree with that, but I think at least he was around about his best around about that time. So for all these punch stats, I've calculated them at 12 rounds. So say if a fight's been a knockout in the 7th round, I've divided all the punch stats, the landed and thrown, by 7, and then I've multiplied them by 12 just to give a good indicator. So the fights I've used for after is Wladimir Klitschko versus Jennings, Wladimir Klitschko versus Povetkin, Wladimir Klitschko versus Whyte, Wladimir Klitschko versus Thompson 2, Wladimir Klitschko versus Pulev, and Wladimir Klitschko versus Pianeta. And for before, I've used Wladimir Klitschko versus David Haye, Wladimir Klitschko versus Imbragimov, Wladimir Klitschko versus Peter, Wladimir Klitschko versus Thompson 1, Wladimir Klitschko versus Rachman, and Wladimir Klitschko versus Brock. The reason I've used 6 opponents for before and after is so you get a variation in styles, and I think you need at least 6 people to get a good indicator if there's been a decline in accuracy or punch output. So I'm not going to bore you with the individual stats per fight, but I'll just get to the conclusion right away. So for the before stats, Wladimir Klitschko, for the total of them 6 fights, landed 1,077 punches and threw 3,022 punches, which gives him an accuracy of 36%. And for the after with Wladimir Klitschko, for them 6 fights, he landed 981 punches and threw 2,664 punches with an accuracy of 37%. So yeah, there is some truth to his punch output declining. I mean, there's a significant decrease in his punch output, but it's also worth noting there that his accuracy has increased slightly. So you can't really say, in that time frame anyway, that his accuracy has declined much. Now, of course, a lot of people will say, well, it's not really so much about since after the David Haye fight, it's about Wladimir Klitschko's punch output and accuracy declining over the last 2 years. Now, the problem with this is I can't you can't calculate it over the last 2 years. Boxers just don't have enough fights in that time frame to be able to calculate that accurately. So I can just do over the last, 4 years of his career compared to the previous 4 years of his career. And there's been a decline in his punch output, but it's significant, but it's not that dramatic. But it's also worth noting that his accuracy has increased. So the decline in his punch output might not mean as much as you'd at first think. So just to conclude this, has there been a proven decline in Wladimir Klitschko's output and accuracy? Well, not really, no. It looks like his punch output is just not that dramatically declined, and his accuracy has actually increased, so it looks about the same amount. So there's not really any truth to the fact that Wladimir Klitschko has been on a decline, at least since from the David Haye fight. And just like I said before, if you're going to calculate it over the last 2 years, you just can't do it. It's not possible. And you couldn't reach a definitive conclusion from the last couple of years.